set of slides talks about emotional intelligence, the work of the field of positive psychology with optimism and pessimism, and developmental life transitions. The reason I like to talk about these topics is because in order to help children understand better their emotional states, their behaviors, and the messages that they send themselves, we all need to be able to understand those processes in ourselves. So this is, again, just an introduction to these topics. And if you're interested in these topics, I encourage you to look into other resources and really learn about them. Each topic is is very in-depth in and of itself. We often hear a lot about emotional intelligence, and this often comes from the book that was written about 30 years ago by Daniel Goleman. He took a lot of the research on emotional intelligence and put it into a New York Times bestseller, and then it really got information out there and got people exposed to it. So emotional intelligence is considered by those people that ascribe to it as being a better predictor of life success than just having a high IQ. Now, if you remember, we've talked all semester about how we are social creatures and we're very emotionally linked to each other. And so the better that we're able to navigate our emotional lives, the better we are at really being present in our lives, but also the richer our relationships are going to be. There are 5 components of emotional intelligence, and these seem like they should be very much common sense, but really they are areas that a lot of people struggle with. The first one has to do with knowing one's emotions. The better that we're able to understand our emotional states, the better we're able to use our emotions to navigate how we are experiencing our day-to-day activities. The next has to do with managing our emotions. When we are able to manage our emotions, handle delayed gratification, address our emotions in appropriate ways and not stuff them or not explode, that also can help us get our needs met in more productive kinds of ways. The third has to do with our ability to motivate ourselves. When you're more able to motivate yourself because of doing the right thing or because it has value for yourself, you're not dependent upon other people motivating you or encouraging you all the time to do things. Then lastly, the 4th and the 5th category here have to do with our capacity for empathy and our ability to handle relationships. The more that we can be empathetic of humans in general, and the better that we're able to navigate our relationships, the stronger we're going to be with emotional intelligence. So when we work with children, when we're able to help them recognize their emotions, when we're able to help them developmentally learn how to handle their emotions in appropriate ways, and that also comes with us role modeling appropriate expression of emotions, and then motivating oneself to feel good about doing something because it has meaning for us, and our capacity for empathy and relationships. When we work with children using the emotional intelligence factors, then we also help them to learn the components of emotional intelligence. The next has to do with the field of positive psychology and the work of Martin Seligman and his work specifically on optimism and pessimism. And he would say that optimism is more than just the phrase of seeing the glass as half full or half empty, but has to do with explanatory style. And explanatory style has to do with how we explain why any good or bad event happens to us. And it has to do with what he refers to as the 3 Ps: permanence, pervasiveness, and personalization. Permanence has to do that when an event happens, that our explanatory style is that it sometimes happens or it always happens. And that depends on whether it's a good event or a bad event. So in other words, somebody who's more pessimistic would say that when something bad happens to them, it always happens to them. The pervasiveness has to do that when something bad happens in one area of our life, it colors other aspects. And then the personalization is regarding who is at fault. And it has to do with the degree to which we take responsibility and weighing out what is our responsibility versus what's not. One thing that he talks clearly about is that he's not advocating that people don't take responsibility, but that people who tend to be more depressed tend to take on something that is negative as being more of their responsibility than maybe it really isn't. The reason that the looking at our explanatory style has been of research interest is because researchers have actually found that people who have a more negative, pessimistic style are more at risk for three things. You're more at risk for depression, more health issues, particularly after the age of 40, and also not achieving as much in life. So if you think about it, if you think that good things are never going to happen, that you're not good at anything, and that whatever you try, you fail at, you're going to be less apt to go out and try new things and to risk. Martin Seligman also talks about the work of Albert Ellis and his rational emotive behavior therapy. And Albert Ellis came up with what he referred to as the ABC theory. And he said that in life we have an activating event and we often then think that there's a consequence. But really what fuels the consequence has to do with our belief about the event. And people who catastrophize often struggle with being able to see that things can be better. So for somebody who has a pessimistic explanatory style and they catastrophize after something bad happens and they think the worst case scenario is going to happen, that he would ask people to challenge their thoughts. And one of them would be, what's the likelihood that this will happen? What's the likelihood that the worst case scenario won't happen? What's another way of looking at it, and what is a plan of action? So this sometimes can help people to stop and really try to rationally look at their explanatory style with regards to a bad event. So an example might be when somebody doesn't get a job that they really truly worked hard for and wanted. And the person says, I'm never going to find a job that I like. And so challenging, is it really true? Are you never in your life ever going to be able to find a job that you like? And probably that's not going to be the case. But a way of looking at it is that you're being very discouraged, feeling very disappointed, it can feel very overwhelming. But what is a good plan of action to move forward? And so coming up with concrete things that a person can do can often be helpful. So in addition to looking at our emotional intelligence states, how we look at life events and our explanatory style is how we transition through developmental life transitions. Now there are several people, a lot of different theorists that have looked at transitions. William Bridges actually wrote a book called Transitions, which is still very popular today. And Nancy Schlossberg also did a lot of research on transitions, and she talks about them as transitions can be events and non-events. Non-events are when we expect that something's going to happen in our life and it doesn't. That actually is a transition in itself. Developmental life transitions can be really anything. It can be from transitioning from elementary school to high school, to going from not having a driver's license to having a driver's license, to graduating from high school or college and getting a job, getting married, not getting married, having a health issue that changes our interactions in life, to even winning the lottery. So adjustments, developmental life transitions can be a variety of different things. And our adjustment to developmental life transitions is a result of a variety of different factors. And some of those include the timing, whether or not we feel that the timing is on timing or off timing. So in other words, getting married at 80 for the first time by society might be considered an off timing event, even though it's a positive event, it would be considered off timing. Gaining a role or losing a role. So if we use the analogy of getting married, you're gaining a spouse, but you're losing the role as a single person. Whether something is considered a positive or a negative change in your life, whether it's permanent or temporary. Some things are better if you consider them to be permanent. Some things are better if you consider them to be temporary. The degree of choice that we have in the process also influences our movement through developmental life transitions, and our degree of social support. Everybody needs social support at different times. Some people need more than others, but that variation does depend upon each person. So whether it's ourselves or we're working with children, when we look at how we navigate our emotional lives, how we explain away why things happen to us, and how we transition from different events in our lives can be role modeled. And when we understand them, we can help children in that process. And when they develop skills themselves, they become more resilient. And when we also are in a position where we're talking about what's happening and helping children come up with skills and ways to cope throughout life, it also strengthens our ability to continue to do that in our own lives.